I'm Christine, 29 female. I live in a quiet suburb that's just close enough to the city to feel connected but far enough away to have a yard. I share my home with my fiancé, Mark, and our golden retriever, Leo. By trade, I'm an event coordinator, which means my life is a series of meticulously planned schedules and controlled chaos, and honestly, I love it. But the meticulously planned life I had built for myself was about to be shattered by the one person I should have been able to trust the most: my own sister. This is the story of how my sister, Jessica, tried to destroy my happiness by twisting a painful family secret, and how I used my skills for planning to make sure the truth came out in the most public way possible. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The day Mark proposed was, without a doubt, the happiest day of my life. It was a crisp autumn afternoon, the kind where the air smells like wood smoke and fallen leaves. He'd taken me to the botanical gardens where we had our first date. As we stood on a small stone bridge overlooking a koi pond, the water shimmering with the reflection of amber and crimson trees, he got down on one knee. He pulled out a velvet box, and inside was a ring that was so perfectly me, a simple, elegant emerald-cut diamond on a platinum band. I was crying before he even finished asking the question. Of course, I said yes. We spent the rest of the afternoon in a blissful haze, calling our family and closest friends. My parents were ecstatic. Mark's parents, who already treated me like a daughter, were overjoyed. My cousin and best friend, Emily, shrieked so loudly I had to hold the phone away from my ear. The final call I made was to my sister, Jessica. "We have news," I chirped, unable to keep the giddiness out of my voice. "Let me guess," she said, her tone flat. Mark finally popped the question. My smile faltered for a second. There was no excitement in her voice, just a tired sort of resignation. I tried to brush it off. He did. It was perfect. We're at the botanical gardens right now. "Oh, cute." There was a pause. "Send me a picture of the ring." I did, my fingers fumbling slightly. The reply came back a moment later. "It's nice. A little traditional for my taste, but nice." That was Jessica in a nutshell. She always had to find the small, dark cloud in every silver lining. 2 years my junior, she had always been the flashier of the two of us. While I was the planner, the steady one, she was the spontaneous, fiery one who lived life in dramatic bursts. She worked as a real estate agent, a job that suited her perfectly. She was charming, persuasive, and had a knack for presenting a slightly weathered house as a vintage home with rustic potential. I always felt she applied that same skill to the truth. Growing up, we were close in the way sisters often are, a chaotic mix of fierce loyalty and brutal competition. But as we entered our 20s, a strange distance grew between us. It felt like every milestone I reached was a personal affront to her. When I got my promotion to senior event coordinator, she announced she was getting her real estate license the next week. When I bought my first car, she leased a luxury SUV 2 months later. It was a silent, one-sided rivalry that I never wanted to participate in. When Mark and I got back to my apartment that evening, he'd arranged for our family to be there for a surprise celebration. My parents hugged us, champagne was popped, and the room was filled with laughter. Jessica was there, standing in the corner, nursing a glass of Prosecco. She managed a tight-lipped smile when I approached her. "I'm really happy for you, Chris," she said, her eyes flicking from my face to the ring on my finger. "Mark is a great guy. A great, stable, predictable guy." The compliment was wrapped in so many layers of condescension, it was barely a compliment at all. "He is," I said, choosing to ignore her tone. "I'm very lucky." "You are," she agreed, her gaze intensifying. "It's amazing how things work out. You always land on your feet, don't you?" The comment was odd, laced with a bitterness that felt out of place even for her. I watched her for the rest of the night. While everyone else mingled and celebrated, she mostly kept to herself, scrolling through her phone. When she thought no one was looking, I saw her staring at Mark, her expression unreadable. It wasn't longing or attraction, it was something colder. It looked like calculation. I told myself I was being paranoid, that the emotion of the day was making me overthink things. My sister was just being Jessica. She'd come around eventually, once the reality of planning a wedding, something she'd always claimed to want, was underway. I couldn't have been more wrong. The envy in her eyes thawed. Tea night wasn't just about a ring or a fiancé. It was a storm gathering on the horizon, and my happiness was directly in its path. Over the next few weeks, the wedding planning began in earnest. As an event coordinator, I was in my element. I had binders, spreadsheets, and a timeline that was scheduled down to the minute. Mark was a wonderfully supportive partner, happily weighing in on cake flavors and floral arrangements. My parents were a huge help, and Emily had already taken on her maid of honor duties with military precision. The only person who was consistently unhelpful was Jessica. I had asked her to be a bridesmaid, of course. It felt like the obligatory, sisterly thing to do. She accepted with a sigh, as if I'd asked her to clean my gutters. Every decision was met with her criticism. The venue I loved was tacky. The dress I adored was matronly. The color palette I chose was boring. She offered no constructive alternatives, only a constant stream of negativity. "I'm just trying to be honest," she'd say with a shrug when I finally got frustrated with her. "I don't want you to look back at your wedding photos and cringe. I'm just looking out for you." But it didn't feel like she was looking out for me. It felt like sabotage. Small things at first. She would forget to RSVP to a dress fitting. She would accidentally mention to my mother that Mark and I had a minor disagreement, blowing it completely out of proportion. It was death by 1,000 paper cuts, each one designed to introduce a little bit of doubt, a little bit of stress, into what was supposed to be a joyous time. Mark noticed it too. "Is Jessica always like this?" he asked one night after she'd spent an entire dinner complaining about the caterer we'd chosen. "Pretty much," I sighed, leaning my head on his shoulder. "She doesn't mean any harm. I think she's just struggling to find her own way and takes it out on me." It was the excuse I had been making for her my entire life. She's just young. She's just figuring things out. She just needs attention. But this time, it felt different. There was a malice to her actions that I hadn't seen before. It was a focused, intentional effort to chip away at my happiness. And the worst part was, I was about to find out just how far she was willing to go. The family secret was something we never, ever talked about. It was a dark chapter from my late teenage years, a period of my life I had worked hard to move past. When I was 17, I made a terrible mistake. I was at a party, got caught up with the wrong crowd, and was arrested for being in a car where other kids had illegal substances. I wasn't using them, but I was charged with possession simply for being there. It was a nightmare. My parents hired a lawyer, and because I was a minor with a clean record, the charges were eventually dropped and my record was expunged. It was a terrifying, humiliating experience that served as a massive wake-up call. I cut off those friends, focused on my studies, and never looked back. The only people who knew the full story were my parents, Jessica, and my cousin, Emily. We all made a pact to bury it and never speak of it again. It was a moment of youthful stupidity, not a reflection of the person I had become. Or so I thought. About a month before the wedding, I noticed a change in Mark. He became distant, quiet. He was working late more often, and when he was home, he seemed preoccupied, his phone never far from his hand. When I tried to talk to him, he would just say he was stressed with a big project at work. But it felt like more than that. The easy intimacy we shared had been replaced by a tense, fragile silence. My heart ached with confusion. I ran through every possibility. Was he having second thoughts? Was there someone else? I was driving myself crazy with what-ifs. The breaking point came on a Tuesday night. I had cooked his favorite meal, hoping a quiet dinner at home might help us reconnect. He barely touched his food, just pushed the pasta around his plate with his fork. "Mark, what's going on?" I finally asked, my voice trembling slightly. "Please just talk to me. We can fix whatever this is." He looked up, and the expression on his face was one I'd never seen before. It was a mixture of pain and mistrust. "I don't know if we can, Christine," he said, his voice low. My blood ran cold. What are you talking about? He took a deep breath. I spoke to Jessica last week. She told me some things about your past. I stared at him, my mind a complete blank. Jessica, what could she have possibly said? What things? I whispered. She told me about your arrest, he said, the words hanging in the air like poison. She said she was worried about me, that she felt I had a right to know who I was really marrying. She said it wasn't just a one-time mistake. She said you had a serious problem back then, that you were selling, and that your parents had to spend their entire savvy. NGS to make it all go away, and bribe people to get your record cleared. I felt the air leave my lungs. Every word was a deliberate, calculated distortion of the truth. She hadn't just told him the secret, she had taken it, twisted it, and weaponized it. She painted me as a hardened criminal, a liar, a financial burden on my family. The shame I felt at 17 came rushing back, but this time it was mixed with a burning, white-hot rage. Mark, that's not what happened, I said, my voice shaking. I was a stupid kid in the wrong place at the wrong time. I was never, ever selling anything. My parents hired a lawyer, a good one, but they didn't bribe anyone. The charges were dropped because there was no evidence I had done anything more than sit in a car. Why didn't you tell me? He asked, his voice raw with hurt. If it was just a stupid mistake, why would you hide it from me for 3 years? That question was the one that truly hurt because I knew he was right to ask it. I was ashamed, I admitted, tears welling in my eyes. It was the worst moment of my life. I put it in a box and buried it. It's not who I am, Mark. It has nothing to do with the life we've built together. I should have told you, I know I should have, but I was scared it would change how you saw me. Well, Jessica made sure of that, he said bitterly. She told me she couldn't live with herself if she let me walk into a marriage based on a lie. She made it sound like she was protecting me. Of course, she did. She had wrapped her venom in a cloak of concern. It was a masterclass in manipulation. She had isolated the one piece of my past I was most insecure about and used it to poison the most important relationship in my life. She knew that the lie wasn't just in the details she'd fabricated, but in the fact that I had kept the secret at all. She had made me look like a liar. We talked for hours that night. It was the hardest conversation of our lives. I told him everything, every humiliating detail of that night, the fear, the regret, the relief when it was all over. I explained the pact of silence my family had made. I was completely, painfully honest. He listened, his face a mask of conflict. He loved me, I knew he did, but Jessica's words had planted a seed of doubt, and it was growing in the fertile ground of my omission. I need some time to think, he said finally, getting up from the table. I'm going to stay at my brother's place for a few days. I felt my world crumble. He walked out the door and I collapsed onto a kitchen chair, sobbing. My sister hadn't just tried to break us up, she had almost succeeded. She had used my own shame against me, and in doing so, had nearly destroyed the future I had been so excited to build. The rage I felt was so immense it was suffocating. She hadn't done this to protect Mark. She had done this to hurt me. And as I sat there alone in our kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of a dinner that was supposed to bring us closer, I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. This was war. The next few days were a blur of misery. Mark was gone. The house felt cavernously empty, every room a reminder of his absence. I called and texted him, but my calls went to voicemail and my messages were met with short, non-committal replies. He needed space, he said. I was oscillating wildly between heartbroken sobs and furious, vengeful fantasies. How could he not trust me? But then, how could I blame him? I had kept something significant from him, and my own sister had filled in the blanks with the most damaging lies imaginable. I avoided my family. I couldn't bear to speak to my parents, knowing they'd ask what was wrong, and I certainly couldn't speak to Jessica. The thought of hearing her voice, feigning innocence and concern, made me physically ill. The only person I could turn to was Emily. She came over the night after Mark left, bringing a bottle of wine and a tub of ice cream. She sat with me on the couch as I recounted the entire horrific story. Emily, ever the nurse, was methodical in her fury. She didn't just get angry, she analyzed the situation. "This is pathological, Christine," she said, her expression grim. "This isn't just sibling rivalry. This is a calculated attack. She waited until a month before your wedding, the point of maximum vulnerability, to deploy this. She knew exactly what she was doing." "I know," I cried, wiping my eyes. "She wants to ruin this for me. She wants me to be as unhappy as she is." "So, what are you going to do?" Emily asked, her tone shifting from comforting to strategic. "First, I need to get Mark back," I said, my voice hardening with resolve. "I need to prove to him that Jessica is a manipulative liar, and then I'm going to make her regret this." The opportunity to do the first part came unexpectedly. It was my aunt's 60th birthday party that weekend. The last thing I wanted to do was attend a family gathering, but my mother insisted, it would look strange if I didn't show up. Begrudgingly, I agreed to go for a little while. I put on a brave face, dressed up, and prepared myself for the inevitable encounter with Jessica. The party was at a local banquet hall. As soon as I walked in, I saw her holding court near the bar, laughing loudly with a group of our cousins. She saw me, and her smile tightened for a fraction of a second before she waved me over, all fake enthusiasm. "Chris, you made it. I was worried you wouldn't come," she said, giving me a brittle hug. I could feel the lie in her touch. "Wouldn't miss it," I said through gritted teeth. I needed to act normal, to not let her know that I knew everything. My pain was my secret weapon now. I spent the next hour making small talk, avoiding sympathetic glances from my mother, who clearly knew something was wrong. I was just about to make my escape when I saw Jessica slip out of the main hall with our cousin, Emily. They walked down a side corridor, and on instinct, I followed them, staying far enough behind to remain unseen. The hallway led to a small, empty lounge area. They stopped just inside the doorway, thinking they were alone. I pressed myself against the wall, just out of sight, and listened. "I just don't get what your endgame is here, Jess," Emily said, her voice low and tense. I realized with a jolt that Jessica must have confided in her, probably expecting a sympathetic ear. "My endgame is to stop this ridiculous wedding." Jessica's voice dripped with venom. It was a tone I had never heard from her before, completely stripped of the charming facade she presented to the world. It was pure, unfiltered spite. "She doesn't deserve this. She doesn't deserve him. Everything has always been so easy for Christine. Perfect job, perfect friends, and now the perfect fiancé. It makes me sick." "So you decided to lie to Mark, to tell him that insane story about Christine being some kind of teenage drug lord? That's not just mean, Jessica. That's cruel. That secret was supposed to be buried." "It was the only thing I had that could do real damage," Jessica snapped back. "A little seed of doubt. And it worked, didn't it? Mark's gone. Christine is a wreck. Maybe now she'll know what it feels like to not have everything go her way for once. I'd do anything to stop this wedding from happening. It should be me." The last 3 words hit me like a physical blow. It should be me. It was never about protecting Mark. It was never about my past. It was about her jealousy, a deep, rotting envy that had been festering for years. She didn't just want to stop my wedding, she wanted my life. My hands were shaking. I slowly, silently pulled out my phone. I saw the red light of the video recording app blink on. I held it steady, my heart pounding in my chest, and angled it around the corner of the wall. Emily was shaking her head. "You're delusional, you need help." "What I need is for you to keep your mouth shut," Jessica hissed. "Don't you dare say a word to Christine. Let her fall apart. She needs to be brought down a peg." I kept recording for another 30 seconds as they argued, capturing every venomous word that came out of my sister's mouth. Her confession was clear, her motive laid bare. She admitted to lying. She admitted her goal was to destroy my relationship. She admitted she would do anything to stop the wedding. I slipped my phone back into my purse and crept away, my mind racing. The shock and hurt were still there, but now they were overshadowed by something else, a cold, clear sense of purpose. I had her. The mask had slipped and I had caught it all on camera. Jessica thought my pain was her victory. She had no idea it was about to become her downfall. I walked out of that party not as a victim, but as a planner. And I was about to orchestrate the most important event of my life. Armed with the recording, my first priority was Mark. The video was my proof, the undeniable evidence that could cut through the web of lies Jessica had spun. But I knew I had to handle this carefully. Just showing up and playing the video might seem desperate or even manipulative in its own way. I needed to approach him with the same honesty and vulnerability that I had during our terrible conversation, and use the recording only as confirmation. I called him that night. "Mark," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me, "I know you need space, but I'm asking for 1 hour of your time. Please, meet me for coffee tomorrow morning. After that, whatever you decide, I'll accept it." He was hesitant, but he agreed. We met at a small cafe, a neutral ground. He looked tired, the stress of the past week etched onto his face. The sight of his pain, which my sister had so carelessly caused, reignited my anger. "Thank you for meeting me," I began, taking a deep breath. "I'm not here to beg or to make excuses for not telling you about my past. I should have, and I will ND the rest of my life making sure there are no more secrets between us if you give me that chance. But I am here to tell you, unequivocally, that my sister lied to you." He listened, his expression guarded. "Christine, she's your sister. Why would she make something like that up?" "Because she's jealous," I said simply. "Because for years, she has seen my happiness as her failure, and she told me herself she would do anything to stop our wedding." His eyes narrowed slightly. "She told you that?" "Not me," I said, reaching into my purse and pulling out my phone. "She told our cousin Emily, and I happened to overhear it. I want you to listen to this, Mark. I want you to hear it from her own mouth." I placed the phone on the table between us and pressed play. I didn't play the video, just the audio. I wanted him to focus on the words, on the pure, unadulterated venom in Jessica's voice. The tinny sound of her voice filled the quiet space around our table. "My endgame is to stop this ridiculous wedding. She doesn't deserve this. It makes me sick. It was the only thing I had that could do real damage. I'd do anything to stop this wedding from happening. It should be me." I watched Mark's face as he listened. His guarded expression melted away, replaced by shock, then disbelief, and finally, a deep, simmering anger. By the time the recording ended, his jaw was clenched. He looked from the phone back to my face, and I saw the doubt in his eyes finally extinguish, replaced by the love and trust I had been so terrified of losing. "Oh my God, Chris," he whispered. "I am so sorry. I should have trusted you. To think I let her, I can't believe I fell for it." "She's very convincing," I said, tears of relief now streaming down my face. "She wrapped it all up in fake concern for you." He reached across the table and took both of my hands in his. "I love you. I never should have doubted that. I'm coming home." That moment felt like the sun breaking through the clouds after a week-long storm. We sat in that cafe for another hour, talking, reconnecting, and healing the wound Jessica had torn open. The relief was immense, but as we walked out, hand in hand, my resolve hardened. Getting Mark back was only the first step. Jessica had tried to ruin my life with a lie. Now, I had to make sure everyone knew the truth. My conversation with Mark made me realize that this wasn't just a recent development. Jessica's jealousy had been a quiet poison for years, and I had been willfully ignoring the symptoms. With Emily's help, I started to connect the dots, peeling back the layers of her deception. It was like an investigation into our own shared history. We remembered the time in college when I was nominated for a prestigious scholarship. The day of the interview, my alarm mysteriously failed to go off. I'd overslept and missed it. Jessica had been staying in my dorm room that night and had sworn she'd set a backup alarm for me. At the time, I just assumed it was a freak accident. Now, I wondered. Then there was the time a guy I was casually seeing suddenly ghosted me. A few weeks later, Emily mentioned that she'd heard from a friend that Jessica had told him I was still hung up on an ex. Another misunderstanding I had brushed off. We even talked to a few old high school friends, asking casual questions. A pattern emerged. Jessica had a history of spreading small, believable rumors, not just about me, but about anyone she felt threatened by. She would tell one friend that another had said something critical about them, then sit back and watch the fallout. She was a master of triangulation, of creating conflict where none existed. She thrived on chaos as long as she was the one pulling the strings from the shadows. The most damning piece of our investigation came from my own mother. I sat down with her, Mark by my side, and told her everything. I didn't show her the video. I wasn't ready to detonate that bomb just yet, but I told her about the lies Jessica had told Mark and how she had twisted our family secret. My mother looked horrified, but also not entirely surprised. She sighed heavily, a look of profound sadness on her face. "Your sister," she began, choosing her words carefully, "has always struggled with envy. When you were kids, if you got a toy she wanted, she wouldn't just ask for one too. She would break yours." Then she told me something I never knew. A few years ago, my parents had given me a small sum of money to help with a down payment on my first apartment. They had given Jessica the exact same amount. I had used mine for the apartment as intended. Jessica, my mom confessed, had gambled hers away on a risky stock market tip from a boyfriend and lost it all. She never told me, and she made my parents promise not to tell me either, because she was too embarrassed to admit her failure, especially when I had been so responsible. It all clicked into place. The real estate job, the flashy car, He desperate need to project an image of success. It was all a facade, covering up a deep-seated insecurity and a string of poor choices. She didn't just resent my happiness, she resented my stability, the very stability she had squandered for herself. Her attack on me wasn't just an act of jealousy. It was a desperate attempt to tear my life down to the level of her own chaotic foundation. She couldn't build herself up, so she had to tear me down. With this new understanding, my plan began to take shape. It wasn't enough to just expose her lie to Mark. I had to expose the entire pattern. She had spent years hiding behind a mask of charm and sisterly concern. It was time for everyone to see the person underneath. My rage had now cooled from a wildfire into a focused, blue flame. I was no longer just a hurt sister. I was an event coordinator with a problem to solve. And the problem was Jessica. My goal was simple. I wanted to expose her, but not in a messy, screaming fight that would make me look as unhinged as her. It had to be clean, undeniable, and public. It had to be a perfectly executed event. The venue for this event was already chosen, the rehearsal dinner. It was the perfect stage, an intimate gathering of our closest family and friends, the people whose opinions mattered most. It was the night before the wedding she had tried so desperately to stop. The poetry of it was too perfect to resist. My plan had two key components. The first was the video evidence, my ace in the hole. The second, and arguably more important, was an unimpeachable witness. I needed someone beyond reproach, someone no one would ever suspect of lying or colluding with me. I needed my father. My dad is a quiet, stoic man. He's a retired accountant, a man of numbers and logic who avoids drama at all costs. He loves both his daughters fiercely, but he is not blind to our faults. Getting him involved was a risk. He hated conflict and would want to handle things privately. I had to convince him that the private route was no longer an option. I asked both my parents to come over for dinner. Mark was there, a silent, solid presence by my side. After we ate, I took a deep breath and laid everything out on the table. I told them the full, twisted version of the story Jessica had fed to Mark. I told them about her confession to Emily. And then I played the video. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. My father just sat there, his face like stone, watching the screen of my small phone. He didn't flinch. He just listened intently to his younger daughter's venomous words. When it was over, he was silent for a long time. "Dad," I said softly. "She tried to destroy my relationship, my future, based on a lie. She twisted a family mistake into something monstrous. This can't be swept under the rug." "Your mother and I will talk to her," he said, his voice dangerously calm. "This is a family matter." It stopped being just a family matter when she involved Mark, I countered. And it's gone on for too long. This isn't the first time she's done something like this, is it? The scholarship interview, the lies about my old boyfriends, breaking my things as a child. My father looked at my mother, a silent conversation passing between them. He knew I was right. They had enabled her behavior for years, writing it off as immaturity or sibling rivalry, always cleaning up her messes in the hopes that she would one day grow out of it. "What do you want to do, Christine?" he finally asked. "I want to expose her," I said. "At the rehearsal dinner, I'm going to make a speech and I'm going to play that video for everyone, but it will have more power if it doesn't just come from me. She'll paint me as the hysterical, vengeful bride, but she can't paint you that way, Dad. You are the most honest person we know." My plan was this. During the toasts at the rehearsal dinner, I would get up to speak. I would talk about love, trust, and the importance of family. Then I would pivot, explaining that someone had tried to undermine that trust with lies. Before I played the video, I wanted him, my father, to stand up and corroborate a key part of the story. I wanted him to tell everyone the truth about my arrest, that it was a youthful mistake, that no bribes were paid, and that Jessica knew the truth and chose to lie anyway. His word would be the foundation of fact upon which I would build my case. He would be the unimpeachable witness. He was hesitant. The idea of such a public confrontation went against every fiber of his being. But then he looked at me, and he looked at Mark, and I think he finally saw the depth of the damage Jessica had caused. He saw that her actions weren't just petty jealousy anymore. They were a destructive force that had nearly shattered our family. "All right," he said, his voice firm. "I'll do it. No one hurts my daughter like that and gets away with it." With my father on board, the trap was set. The next few weeks were a strange performance. I had to pretend that everything was fine. Mark and I were back together, and we told everyone we had simply worked through a rough patch. I continued with the wedding planning, and Jessica was forced to play the part of the dutiful bridesmaid. She was smug, believing her plan had failed but that she had gotten away with it. She had no idea what was waiting for her. I meticulously planned the rehearsal dinner. I made sure the seating chart placed key family members and friends at tables near the front. I spoke with the restaurant manager to ensure we had a good quality projector and sound system, telling them I was putting together a surprise slideshow of photos for Mark. The lie felt easy now. I was learning to play Jessica's game. Emily was my co-conspirator. She helped me edit the video clip, isolating the most damning 30 seconds of Jessica's confession. We tested it on the projector to make sure the audio was crystal clear. Every detail was accounted for. As the day of the rehearsal dinner approached, I felt strangely calm. The hurt was still there, a dull ache beneath the surface, but it was being eclipsed by a powerful sense of clarity. Jessica had built her entire identity on a foundation of lies and manipulation. I was about to hold up a mirror and force her, and everyone else, to see the truth. The stage was set, the players were in position, and the script was written. All we had to do was wait for the curtain to rise. The rehearsal dinner was held in the private dining room of a beautiful historic inn. The air was filled with the low hum of happy chatter, the clinking of glasses, and the warm glow of candlelight. 40 of our closest friends and family were there. To any outside observer, it was a perfect picture of pre-wedding bliss. My sister, Jessica, was in her element, flitting from table to table, flashing her brilliant, fake smile, accepting compliments on her bridesmaid dress. She looked radiant. She had no idea she was a dead woman walking. I sat between Mark and my father, picking at my salad, my heart a steady drum against my ribs. Mark squeezed my hand under the table, a silent message of support. I glanced at my father. He met my gaze and gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. We were ready. After the main course, Mark's best man gave a funny, heartfelt speech. Then my maid of honor, Emily, gave a beautiful toast that brought tears to my eyes, and she shot me a look of pure solidarity. Then it was my turn. The restaurant manager dimmed the lights slightly and lowered the projector screen, just as I'd asked. I walked to the front of the room, holding a microphone. I smiled, a genuine smile at the faces of the people I loved. Wow, I began, my voice clear and strong. Thank you all so much for being here with us tonight. Looking out at all of you, I am just so overwhelmed with gratitude. Tomorrow, I get to marry the love of my life. I paused, looking at Mark. Mark, you are the kindest, most honorable man I have ever known. Building a life with you has been the greatest joy of my life, and I can't wait to be your wife. The foundation of our relationship, and the foundation of any good marriage, is trust. Absolute, unconditional trust. I let that word hang in the air. I saw Jessica shift uncomfortably in her seat. Trust is a fragile thing, I continued, my eyes scanning the room before landing on her. It can be broken, and a few weeks ago, the trust in our relationship was put to the terrible test. Someone in this room, someone very close to me, tried to break that trust. They did it by telling Mark a vicious lie about my past, a lie designed to paint me as someone I am not, and to stop this wedding from happening. A confused murmur rippled through the room. People exchanged nervous glances. Jessica's face had gone pale, her smile frozen in place. This person twisted a family secret, a mistake I made as a teenager, into something ugly and malicious. So, before I go any further, I want to clear the air. And I've asked my father to help me do that. I nodded to my dad. He stood up, his presence commanding immediate silence. He looked tired but resolute. Most of you know I'm not a man who likes public speaking, he began, his voice raspy with emotion. But I cannot stand by and allow a lie to hurt my family. When Christine was 17, she was in the wrong place at the wrong time and was arrested. The charges were dropped and her record was expunged because she was innocent of anything more than bad judgment. My wife and I hired a lawyer. We did not pay bribes. We did not empty our savings. We supported our daughter through a mistake. Both of our daughters have always known this to be the truth. He sat down. The silence in the room was absolute. Every eye was now on me, and a few were starting to dart toward Jessica, who looked like she had seen a ghost. Thank you, Dad, I said. So the question is, why would someone who you the truth choose to tell such a damaging lie? Why would my own sister, my bridesmaid, try to sabotage my happiness? I let her name drop like a stone in a silent pond. A collective gasp went through the room. Jessica's face crumpled, the color draining completely. She started to stand up, opening her mouth to protest. Please, Jessica, stay seated, I said, my voice dangerously calm. You'll want to see this. I know you were hoping no one would ever find out what you said, but you made one mistake. You confessed. You told our cousin Emily exactly what you did and why you did it. And you weren't as alone as you thought you were. I clicked the remote in my hand. The projector whirred to life, and the video I had taken in the hallway of the banquet hall filled the screen. There was Jessica, her face twisted in a sneer, her voice, amplified by the restaurant sound system, echoing through the silent room. My endgame is to stop this ridiculous wedding. She doesn't deserve this. It makes me sick. I'd do anything to stop this wedding from happening. It should be me. The clip ended. The screen went black. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I had ever heard. No one moved. No one spoke. They just stared, first at the blank screen, and then at the woman it had just exposed. Jessica was frozen, her face a mask of pure horror and humiliation. Her eyes darted around the room, finding no sympathy, only shock and disgust on the faces of her family and friends. My mother was openly weeping. My aunts and uncles looked stunned. Jessica finally broke. She shot up from her chair, knocking it over with a clatter that broke the spell. You recorded me, she shrieked, her voice shrill. You lied to my fiancé, I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper, yet it carried across the entire room. You tried to ruin my life because you couldn't stand to see me happy. You did this to yourself. She stared at me, her eyes wild with hatred. Then, without another word, she grabbed her purse and fled the room, shoving past a waiter on her way out. The door slammed shut behind her, leaving a stunned and silent party in her wake. I stood there for a moment, the microphone still in my hand, my body trembling with the release of weeks of pent-up anger and pain. Mark was instantly by my side, wrapping his arms around me. The room slowly came back to life, erupting in a low buzz of conversation. One by one, our family members and friends came up to us, offering hugs, words of support, and apologies for not seeing what Jessica was capable of. The trap had been sprung. The truth was out. And my wedding, the one she had tried so hard to destroy, was finally safe. The wedding day itself was beautiful, almost surreally peaceful after the storm of the rehearsal dinner. Waking up that morning, I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in months. The cloud of Jessica's manipulation had finally lifted. Her absence was a palpable relief. There was no bridesmaid fuming in the corner, no sarcastic comments during hair and makeup, no undercurrent of tension. There was only joy. My mother, her eyes still puffy from the night before, helped me into my dress. "I am so sorry, Christine," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm sorry we didn't see how deep her problems ran. We enabled her for too long." "It's not your fault, Mom," I said, hugging her tightly. "Today is a new start, for everyone." And it was. Walking down the aisle toward Mark, seeing the unwavering love and pride in his eyes, I knew we had been through the fire and come out stronger. Our vows, spoken in front of everyone who had witnessed the truth the night before, felt more profound. When we promised to trust and protect each other, the words carried the weight of a battle we had already won. The reception was a true celebration, free of drama and pretense. It was everything I had ever dreamed of. In the days and weeks that followed, the fallout from the rehearsal dinner settled. Jessica, as you can imagine, went completely dark. She didn't answer calls or texts from anyone, including my parents. She had packed a bag and left her apartment. My mom found out from one of Jessica's friends that she had gone to stay with an old college roommate in another state. There was no apology, no explanation, no remorse, just flight. My parents were heartbroken, caught between their anger at what she had done and their innate desire to protect their child. They started going to family counseling to process their grief and to understand the family dynamics that had allowed Jessica's behavior to fester for so long. It was a difficult, painful process for them, but I was proud of them for doing it. The tie with my sister was severed. I don't know if it will ever be repaired, and a part of me isn't sure I want it to be. The person I thought was my sister, the one I grew up with, might never have truly existed. She was a character, a mask worn to hide the deeply happy and manipulative person underneath. Grieving the loss of a sister I never really had was a strange and complicated process. Sometimes I felt a pang of sadness, but mostly I felt relief. I had removed a source of constant, low-grade poison from my life. The experience, as painful as it was, had an unexpected silver lining. It strengthened all of my other relationships. My bond with my parents became more honest. My friendship with Emily, my loyal co-conspirator, became unbreakable. And my marriage to Mark started on a foundation of absolute truth. We had faced the worst kind of betrayal together and had chosen each other without hesitation. There were no secrets between us. About 6 months after the wedding, I received a letter. It was postmarked from a city hundreds of miles away. It was from Jessica. I opened it with trembling hands, not knowing what to expect. It wasn't an apology, not really. It was a rambling, self-pitying letter about how I had humiliated her, how I had turned the family against her, and how I had always had it out for her. She was incapable of taking responsibility. Tucked inside the letter, however, was a single sentence that told me everything I needed to know. She wrote, "I'm getting help now." I don't know if she really is, or if it will make a difference. But for her sake, I hope it's true. I hope she finds a way to build a life for herself that brings her peace, a life where she doesn't feel the need to tear others down to feel tall. As for me, I'm happier than I've ever been. My life is no longer about managing someone else's envy. It's about building my future with my wonderful husband. I still plan events for a living, but the most successful event I ever coordinated was my own rehearsal dinner. It wasn't about flowers or catering, it was about revealing the truth. And sometimes, the truth is the most powerful and liberating celebration of all.